hasta las 7 ng manggi, Lunes hanggang Biyernes. CNN Philippines Hour.
Now, over the weekend, the storm weakened into a tropical depression just this morning, but not without leaving 3 people dead. National disaster response officials report 2 others were injured, another is missing. But in Baybay City in Leyte, south of the provincial capital, Tacloban, over a dozen people were found dead. Our Tacloban-based correspondent Wilmark Amazona joins us on the phone. Wilmark, break down the tally for us, please.
Pia, the number of casualties from landslide that hit the various parts of Baybay City here in Leyte has climbed to 14. The City Disaster Response Office reports that 11 bodies were recovered in Barangay Mailhi, including 8 female victims. 3 other casualties were reported in other areas. While at least 6 residents remain missing, 16 persons were injured and brought to the Immaculate Conception Hospital. More than 100 families from 7 villages had been evacuated. Roads leading to the city from Mahaplag town were rendered impossible by the landslides. Authorities say they have to temporarily stop search and rescue operation due to heavy rains. At least 2 were rescued in a landslide in Barangay Bunga, where at least 6 families were affected. Rescue officials say they need more personnel and equipment. Ormoc City Mayor Richard Gomez said they have sent a rescue team to Baybay City along with a medical team, hygiene kits, medicines, and generator sets. Provincial personnel are also augmenting rescue and relief operation in Baybay City. Back to you, Pia.
Wilmark Amazona there, based in Tacloban. Now, other parts of Leyte are seeing a trail of destruction from tropical depression Agaton. Joining us now is our correspondent Rex Remedio, live from Tacloban City. Rex, can you give us a picture of what's happening there so far?
Well, it's been raining often in most parts of the province, including Tacloban City. Sometimes it's drizzling, then heavy rains. But there are parts of the province that were hit worse by the storm. Some residents are concerned how they can get by in the coming days. The town of Abuyog in Leyte was not spared from massive flooding after Agaton caused heavy downpour in eastern Visayas over the weekend. Schools, hospitals, stores, portions of the town were virtually like a river. That's a rice field, but it's no longer recognizable underwater. These carabaos were trapped in the middle of a paddy in the flooded valley. Some motorcycles braved the deep, but other vehicles are no match to the raging flood waters. Some residents wade their way, while others just keep safe in the dry portion of their flooded homes.
Pasok sana, di na lang nakapasok dahil malaki tubig. Tubig doon, wala din eh. Wala, hanggang dito, doon sa loob.
Carmelita Lagarto could not hold back her tears, recounting how she and her family have been awake since last night. They were surprised at the flash flood in their home and sari-sari store, damaging most of her appliances, clothes, and store items. It took a while before Carmelita was able to buy this refrigerator, only to end up this way.
Siyempre masakit. Bigla. Sa tagal ng panahon, ito lang, naano ko talaga na ganitong kalaking tubig. Mulat-mula pa. Ito lang nangyari po. Siyempre, paano kung bahay namin, ganyan. Wala kaming gamit, walang natira. Mag-umpisa ko sa wala na naman.
As much as she would want to transfer to a safer place, she says she has no money to build a new home. We tried to go to Baybay City where there are reports of heavy floods and landslides. But the police did not let us through a bridge connecting to the city for safety reasons because the flood may have compromised its foundation. It's a difficult situation for Michelle from Mahaplag. She's supposed to bring her husband for dialysis at a hospital in Ormoc City, but landslides have blocked access roads.
Kasi nakakatakot talaga yung sitwasyon namin. Siyempre, kasi pag ang tubig mag-stay sa katawan niya, mapupunta yan sa lungs niya, so maghirapan siya maghinga.
There's no telling when vehicles will be allowed to pass through the bridge, and Michelle hopes and prays it happens soon. The Leyte provincial government is advising residents to always be on alert, follow local warnings and advisories, and evacuate when necessary. Back to you, Pia.
Rex and Mito there reporting from Tacloban. In Cebu province, two main road sections are still impassable in the city of Talisay. Heavy downpour and a minor landslide blocked entry to the upland Manipis Road. That road is the shortest access from Metro Cebu to the west coast of Cebu Island, specifically to Toledo City. In Asturias town, the national highway is impassable to low-ground clearance vehicles because of floodwater spilled over from Barangay Lunas. Asturias is located northwest of Cebu City. Over 200 people are staying at evacuation centers in the province, including over 140 from low-level areas in Cebu City. They sought shelter in gymnasiums and schools after heavy downpour last night. Cebu City, as well as a town in Davao Oriental and Trento town in Agusan del Sur, have declared a state of calamity because of the floods and damage from this severe weather. The declaration will help speed up local disaster response and assistance to victims. It looks like Agaton will continue to bring rains in the province of Cebu and other parts of the country. The tropical depression has made landfall over Basay town in Samar, where it was last located. Signal number 1 still up over the southern portion of Masbate, the northeastern portion of Cebu, eastern Samar, northern Samar, Biliran, Leyte, southern Leyte, and the eastern portion of Bohol. Surigao del Norte and Dinagat Islands in Mindanao are under the same storm signal. Expect moderate to heavy with at times intense rains throughout the day in the areas flashed on your screens. Agaton is seen to remain as a tropical depression as it interacts with another tropical cyclone, Malakas. The rains are not stopping travelers from booking trips and heading out for the Holy Week break. As Paige Javier reports, transport authorities are now checking if there is a need to add more buses to accommodate all passengers.
Adrian Macayon is one of many passengers still hoping to get a ride home this Holy Week. Upon arriving at PITX, he was greeted by long lines at the ticketing booth. It remains unclear if he can book a trip.
Bibisitahin lang kasi namin yung anak namin sa Bicol. Kasi ngayon lang yung time namin para makauwi ng Bicol. May work po kasi.
He plans to go home on Holy Wednesday, the same day PITX officials are expecting an influx of passengers.
Kung di kami makakasakay dito sa PTX ng 13, maghanap na lang kami ng van.
Passengers came in waves on Holy Monday, which is also the start of the work week for some. But not all of the passengers are province-bound.
Napakarami na po ng mga pasero na nakikita natin dito, pero kasama naman po ito sa sa inaasahan natin.
PITX officials say there were over 156,000 passengers over the weekend, while last Friday saw a peak of more than 103,000. They expect this number to continue to go up in the coming days.
Rest assured na nandito po kami, nag-deploy din po kami ng mga emergency group, traffic enforcers. Dito naman sa PITX, meron tayong mga management protocols in place upang mas mapabilis ang movement ng tao.
Officials from the MMDA, LTFRB, DOTR, and IACT conducted an inspection of the deployment at PITX. After seeing long lines at the terminal, LTFRB Chairman Martin Delgra ordered a review of service plans of city buses.
Maraming pasahero pero yung pagpasok at paglabas ng mga buses, okay naman po. Dito lang nakita namin na mahabang pila. Nakapagtataka nga kasi short routes eh.
The LTFRB is also studying if there is a need to deploy more units this Holy Week. Officials remind those planning to head home, book your trips online, or go to the ticket booths early to avoid delays. Paige Javier, CNN Philippines.
Straight ahead on Newsnight, not fake news. The Philippine Embassy in Singapore confirms that one overseas Filipino voter got a pre-shaded ballot. And the stage is set for the match between the Blue Eagles and the Green Archers, that we may neither see blue nor green on the court side. Find out why here on CNN Philippines. Welcome back to Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines. The 30-day voting period for over 1 million Filipinos abroad has begun. How's it going so far? As Melissa Lopez tells us, there were delays in a number of embassies and reports of pre-shaded ballots.
Some 1.7 million Filipinos living abroad can now cast their ballots for the May elections beginning Sunday, April 10th. Most of the 92 embassies and foreign posts serving as polling precincts opened at 8 a.m. Philippine time. Voting was delayed in select areas such as in Shanghai, China, Pakistan, Timor-Leste, Afghanistan, and Ukraine, while vote counting machines have not yet arrived in New Zealand, Milan in Italy, and New York in the U.S. These posts are expected to catch up with a month-long voting within the week as they receive vote counting machines and complete final preparations.
Makikita naman namin, generally peaceful naman siya, and then naging successful naman yung opening ng ating polls, except only for some issues na hindi natin maiwasan.
Absentee voters abroad can only elect national candidates from president to party list. They may either vote in person or by mailing in their ballots after shading the circles at home. Some 79,000 voters will vote manually by writing the names of candidates. COMELEC says it will look into a reported pre-shaded ballot given to Singapore-based voter Cheryl Abundo. She said poll workers gave a replacement ballot and said the first sheet given to her, which allegedly had a pre-selected Vice President and Senator Betts, was a spoiled ballot from the previous day. There's a similar report in Dubai.
Wala po kaming natanggap na report kahit sa ating post, sa kahit na kaninong opisyal natin doon sa Singapore, and therefore fake news po yun.
COMELEC says voters should only accept a clean ballot before they sit down to vote. In Hong Kong, the Consul General's office was overwhelmed with voters on Sunday, which forced Hong Kong police to stop the crowd from growing amid a surge in COVID-19 infections there. Commissioner Marlon Casquejo says precincts will be doubled to 10 to accommodate over 93,000 voters. The poll body also warns the public about exit polls, saying these are not credible. This involves asking voters who they voted for as they leave polling centers. Overseas voters can visit embassies and consulates or send their filled-up ballots until May 9th to make their vote count. Melissa Lopez, CNN Philippines.
The Philippine Embassy in Singapore confirms one incident of a spoiled ballot with the names of VP Bet Sara Duterte and some senators already shaded. The embassy insists that it was an isolated incident. The running mate of Senator Manny Pacquiao, Lito Atienza, will not back out of the vice presidential race after Senator Ping Lacson rejected the congressman's proposal to withdraw his presidential bid. Atienza says he and Lacson should both step aside so Pacquiao and VP Bet Tito Soto can form a stronger tandem against Bongbong Marcos and Sara Duterte. But Lacson wants only Atienza to withdraw, saying he is open to sharing Soto with Pacquiao as a common VP candidate if that happens.
Definitely not. No withdrawal for me too. Nag-usap na kami ni Manny, sabi nga niya, I am not even giving the suggestion that you withdraw. But I trust in you, and if we win together. If we lose together. My idea is to give everybody a new shifting, a new opportunity to move. With that idea of Ping, there is no movement. You will be stuck. It will strengthen Bongbong Marcos.
Lacson reveals former Quezon City Mayor June Simon asked him to withdraw from the race in favor of Vice President Lenny Robredo. Lacson claims Simon said he can make Robredo's running mate Kiko Pangilinan back out so she can form a tandem with Soto instead. Robredo's spokesperson Barry Gutierrez says Simon is not authorized to speak for her campaign. Earlier today, he denied that her team is pursuing active unification efforts.
Ever since the vice president declared her candidacy, following the talks that unfortunately did not lead to a unified slate, our position has been we will no longer pursue this actively. We have been very, very clear on our position, that particularly on the vice president, that her running mate of choice, the only vice president she is campaigning for, and who has no intention of withdrawing, is Senator Kiko Pangilinan.
The Zamboanga chapter of Ikaw Muna Pilipinas switches support from Manila Mayor Isko Moreno to Robredo. The group is also endorsing VP candidate Sara Duterte. IM Pilipinas Zamboanga says recent pre-election surveys and internal studies show Moreno's support base could no longer keep up with those of Marcos and Robredo. The group calls on candidates to rally behind the most winnable contender to prevent Marcos from winning and to prevent what it calls a dark past from emerging again. But Moreno's political party believes Marcos's chances of winning will increase if the Manila mayor drops out of the race. Acción Democrático insists that Moreno still has a fighting chance since he is the top alternative choice among presidential candidates and the second place in the Tangere voter preference survey.
May nagsabi na withdraw Isko, but that's wrong. If Mayor Isko withdraws, it's showing that 45% of those who chose Mayor Isko will go to Marcos and only a mere 4% will go to Robredo. The probability value of being second choice is that there are many still soft voters or soft supporters amongst the Marcos numbers or the Marcos supporters and the Robredo supporters. There could still be a shift in support towards a different candidate.
Up to 80,000 people showed up at his concert rally in Manila Sunday evening. Some performers who gave star power to the event include Jimmy Bondoc, South Border, Nina, and Shamrock. Customers of power distributor Meralco will pay more for their bills this month, not just because of the summer season, but also the higher generation costs. Chrissy Di Matulak tells us by how much.
Susan runs a small restaurant and her household has a monthly power consumption of around 10,000 pesos. She could pay more for her bill in April because of higher charges announced by power distributor Meralco. Residential customers like Susan, consuming 200 kilowatt hours per month, can expect to pay 107 pesos more.
Kami dyan, bawat isa-isa kaming gamit ng electric pan. Ngayon, bawas na talaga. Hindi na pwede na isa-isa.
Meralco says the overall rate for a typical household will go up by 53 centavos to 10 pesos and 18 centavos per kilowatt hour, from 9 pesos and 65 centavos per kilowatt hour in March. Meralco says this is due to higher generation costs. The company assures customers it is trying to cushion the impact by deferring the collection of higher generation charge from March to June, totaling 1.8 billion pesos.
Ayon sa utos ng ERC, ang total amount nga na i-defer for collection this April is around 1.2 billion pesos. Okay. So, and the collection will be amortized without interest in May, June, and July, so over the next 3 months. So we estimate that the collection will be equivalent to around 15 centavos per kilowatt hour each month.
Meralco says power rates in April are still lower than during pre-pandemic.
At that time, the overall rate was 10 pesos and 56 centavos. For this April, a 200 kilowatt hour customer, April 22, will be paying 10 pesos and 18 centavos. So actually, a 200 kilowatt hour customer today will still be paying less than what they were paying in April 2019.
Maraming cost of goods and services nagtaasa na simula noong April 2019.
That's why it advises customers to use electricity wisely and conserve energy, just like what Susan and her family have opted to do. Chrissy Di Matulak, CNN Philippines.
Senate President Tito Soto says he received from a whistleblower a list of 4 names allegedly behind the massive vegetable smuggling. Soto adds he will validate their identities with agriculture and customs officials. In the third hearing of the Senate committee tomorrow on agricultural smuggling, Agriculture Secretary William Dar said he will send representatives in his place. In Benguet alone, carrot farmers lose 2.5 million pesos per day from smuggling, according to the League of Associations at the La Trinidad vegetable trading areas.
Kung meron tayong magandang natanggap na impormasyon, then mapipilitan akong imbitahin yung 4 na yon, or kung ayaw umattend, susubpina natin.
In the last hearing, Agriculture Assistant Secretary Federico Lasiste admitted to getting phone calls from big-time personalities to influence anti-smuggling efforts. Soto said Lasiste has not submitted their names. Coming up, some of the biggest artists in K-pop come together for a reunion like no other. Plus, no rivalry in politics for the Blue Eagles and the Green Archers. Ateneo and La Salle are asking UAAP fans to wear one color tomorrow, and it's neither blue nor green. Details next here on Newsnight. Welcome back to CNN Philippines. Pinoy athletes are winning international titles left and right. Two more were just added to the list on Sunday in his debut in the world boxing capital, Las Vegas, Nevada. Humir Marshall beat American boxer Isaiah Hart. Marshall recovered from 3 knockdowns to earn a 4th round technical knockout win. The referee stopped the match with 47 seconds remaining in the round. Marshall's professional boxing record stands at 2 wins and 0 losses. Teen tennis sensation Alex Ayala joined in on the victories, bagging her 2nd professional title in the International Tennis Federation W25 Chiang Rai tournament in Thailand. Ayala outlasted Luxika Kumkum in straight sets, 6-4, 6-2. The 16-year-old told CNN Philippines about her tough journey before her latest triumph.
Last quarter of last year was very tough for me. I had an injury in my foot, which kept me out of the court for a couple months, and I got COVID towards the end of December. So it was tough to bounce back and to get my rhythm of competition back in my system, which is what I think makes this win so much more special.
Ayala adds she is excited to represent the country in the Southeast Asian Games next month. Now, here at home, the final leg of the 2nd PBA 3x3 conference kicks off tomorrow. The Pure Foods TJ Titans will face the Cavitex Braves for the first game, 8 a.m. at the Araneta Coliseum. Meanwhile, the Limitless App Masters will attempt to continue their winning streak from the 4th and 5th legs. The squad will play against the Sista Super Sealers at 10:05 a.m. And on to the UAAP. Instead of a crowd of green and blue, we might just witness a sea of pink in tomorrow's Ateneo versus La Salle game. The presidents of both universities urging fans supporting Leni Robredo to wear the presidential candidate's campaign color. at the game in the Mall of Asia Arena at 7 p.m. In entertainment over the weekend, some of the biggest artists in P-pop graced the country's premier concert venue, and as Paige Javier tells us, it made for a satisfying in-person reunion between musicians and their supporters.
The wait is finally over for the return of live concerts to the Big Dome. After welcoming audiences in sports events, thousands of music fans filled the Araneta Coliseum for the first time on Sunday.
Sobrang saya po. Actually, first time ko po manood sa Araneta. Sobrang happy na magkakaroon na ulit ng concert ng face-to-face.
Sobrang happy po, tapos nakaka-excite kasi first concert po ng P-pop, tsaka nagsasama-sama po lahat ng P-pop fandom.
Just like their fans, artists were grateful to finally meet face-to-face and sing together again.
Sobrang nakaka-excite na medyo nakakakaba, pero yung eagerness po namin na-imbak ng 2 years, ngayon po namin siya ilalabas kasi sobrang nakakilabot po yung audience ngayon.
The comeback of live concerts in Araneta also coincided with another first, the biggest gathering of the Pinoy pop or P-pop community. The 2022 P-pop Con was a 2-day affair that wrapped up with Sunday's concert featuring artists like SB19, Fourth Impact, BGYO, and Beanie.
As the pioneer of the P-pop group here in the Philippines, we are so happy to see us as a group, as one, and I can say that P-pop is rising right now.
Before that, fans and artists gathered for the P-pop convention on Saturday. Many hope the first P-pop Con will not be the last.
For sure na magpapatuloy pa ito yung mga ganitong events. Abangan nyo lang po yan and keep supporting everyone.
Yung ultimate dream naman po namin for P-pop, not just for P-pop but for the entire country, na makilala po talaga yung talento ng Filipinos.
There's nowhere to go but up as the journey to elevate P-pop locally and globally continues. One group and one concert at a time. Paige Javier, CNN Philippines.
And that is it for tonight. Join me again on News.ph at 7 p.m. I'm Pia Honteveros for Newsnight, where we go above and beyond the headlines.
This program is brought to you by
It's been 2 years since the World Health Organization declared COVID-19 a pandemic. And like most viruses, it continues to mutate into different transmissible variants. But the question remains, where are we now in the battle against COVID-19? In this episode, we'll review where the herd immunity threshold is and which gaps we still have to fill as we enter year 3 of the coronavirus pandemic. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez and welcome to MedTalk Health Talk on CNN Philippines. Our guests are here today to give insights on the current state of the COVID-19 pandemic. With us is Dr. Ronjin Solante, who is the head of the Infectious Diseases and Tropical Medicine Department of San Lazaro Hospital and member of the Vaccine Expert Panel. We're also joined by Dr. Mark Edsel Ayes. He's the Clinical Genomics Laboratory Head at the Philippine Genome Center. Now, recent figures show that the Philippines is back to low risk for COVID-19. I'll start the discussion with Dr. Edsel. Do you think the country is out of danger? And if so, to which should we attribute the drop in infections?
The number of active cases has been going down.
And as we have seen over the course of the pandemic, which has been nearly 2 years, is that there has been a cyclic occurrence of cases. So there will be surges and then they will go back down again. But just to reiterate, in the context of the pandemic, the WHO has not yet declared that the pandemic has ended. There are still active infections going around the world. And as such, the possibility of another surge occurring due to another variant that can come about as a result of all of these active infections is still possible.
Now, Dr. Jean, when it comes to that, people are getting really excited, really can't wait for all of this to end, but yet there are still some infections going about. Some people are still being sick with COVID-19, even though they are already vaccinated and boosted as well. What could be an explanation for this, Dr. Jean?
We know that over the past months, the virus has mutated, and that mutation also affected the ability of their vaccine to produce those antibodies to the point that it was able to evade the antibodies produced by our immune system. And precisely, that's what we're talking about, that there will still be infection, there will still be transmission, but with vaccination, the risk of getting the more severe form, getting to be hospitalized, will be manageable precisely as we move on with this pandemic, since the vaccine are not virus blocking. There's still a possibility that transmission can occur, and that's why we are really emphasizing the importance of vaccination, particularly the booster dose of the vulnerable population.
Dr. Jean, earlier in the pandemic, there was a lot of focus on the number of cases. How many new cases do we have? Is this still a figure that Filipinos should be concerned about, or should they focus on these figures, or how many people are dying if the hospitals are being filled?
The experience we have for several months, and especially for the 2 to 3 waves of surge of cases that we have, I think it's now important that it's not really monitoring the number of cases every day. The most important part now is monitoring the healthcare utilization, looking at patients, if they have COVID, are admitted, did they develop severe infection? Because these are the more important metrics in terms of preparation and in terms of more strict implementation of an alert level, rather than just counting cases where most of these cases are mild, and in fact, a lot of them are really asymptomatic.
The health department also said that the healthcare utilization rates in the country and most of its regions were at low risk, and that only the intensive care unit occupancy of the Davao region remains at moderate risk. Dr. Jean, what does this mean for our country?
This virus is manageable. The number of cases are manageable, and we can now focus on other conditions or other infectious diseases that has suffered in terms of the increases in cases during the pandemic. And I would like to give examples like tuberculosis and HIV. For the past 2 years, there is really a significant increase of these cases because most of those patients who have this infection are not going to the hospital because of fear of COVID-19. So it's good that our healthcare utilization is going down so that we can take care of other infectious diseases aside from COVID-19.
Last January 2022, there was a record-breaking surge in infections following the detection of the hyper-contagious Omicron variant. Now, though, a new variant has emerged, the BA.2. Dr. Edsel, here we go again. Another variant is coming up. What can you tell us about this new BA.2? Is this something that we should be worried about, something that we should be concerned?
From the current studies going on, they show that BA.2, or the subvariant of Omicron, is only slightly more infectious than Omicron, but has no difference in terms of the severity, at least from what current reports are suggesting.
Now, another catchphrase, of course, lately is the term endemic. So we hear a lot of terms come about that instead of the COVID-19 becoming in a pandemic situation, it will become endemic. Dr. Jean, what does endemic mean?
Just to give example of endemic infections in the country, we have dengue, we have leptospirosis, even typhoid fever. So what the commonality among these cases? These are cases year-round, but not enough to disrupt our life, not enough to cause lockdowns. And at the same time, we still maintain to treat them as something that to prevent complications. So that's what we are hoping, that this virus will be just endemic and it will not also disrupt the healthcare utilization rate in our country.
In line with that, Dr. Jean, there's also a trend nowadays with other countries, Western countries, of already taking away the mask protocol that they have. People are now walking around without masks. Now, I have to include there that the mask issue in other countries is much more politicized than it is here. But Dr. Jean, in a purely scientific sense, can the Filipinos sort of see in the foreseeable future that they will no longer be needing to wear masks?
Yes, that's a possibility, and that will depend on the number of cases in the community. As long as there will be no more higher community transmission, I think that will eventually come. No? But at this point in time, since we don't know yet the behavior of this Omicron variant, we're still seeing cases every day. It's not safe to take out our masks. And that's the most important protection as we go out from our home, we go to our workplaces, protecting us from being exposed to possible source of an infection.
Yes, so the best way pa rin is to follow the basic health protocol. So wear your mask, practice proper hand washing, and of course, physical distancing. Now, COVID-19 is becoming endemic. Does not mean that we've seen the last days of the virus. But the hope is that enough people gain immune protection from vaccination or natural infection. When we return, we look into how far we've gone in vaccination and treatment for COVID-19. We'll be right back here on Med Talk Health Talk. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and welcome back to Med Talk Health Talk, where caring is our calling. According to Reuters COVID-19 tracker, the Philippines has vaccinated more than half of its 110 million population. Booster shots have also been made available for the general population. And most recently, the mass vaccination rollout includes children aged 5 to 11. Now, one issue that parents may have is getting their kids to take their first vaccination shots. Dr. Jean, do you have tips for parents and maybe their guardians on how to prepare their child for their COVID-19 vaccination?
When you are vaccinated, you are protected against severe infections, especially children. These vaccines have been proven to be safe. And when you say safe, the risk of long-term adverse event is very rare. The protection it gets from this vaccine, especially when they will be going face-to-face classes, will be very important for them as we move on with this pandemic. And if they have comorbidities, if the children have comorbidities, they need to get a certificate from their doctors that they are stable to be given the COVID-19 vaccines.
Now, children have been particularly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic as most schools have remained closed for 2 years and counting. Now, Dr. Jean, what do you think about fully vaccinated grade schoolers returning to face-to-face classes? Is this doable? Is the vaccine enough of a safety net for parents especially?
Yes, of course. That's what we want to do now, and that's what we want to emphasize, the importance of vaccination, that when they will be going face-to-face, then they have ample protection. Of course, aside from wearing the face mask and ventilation in the school should also be part of that, the environmental control. But for me, the individual protection with vaccination, even if you get the infection, it can just be mild. But specifically for children being exposed and going for a face-to-face classes, the risk is really very high because they will now be going from their house, transportation, and then to the school, and then back to the house. That's just enormous risk of exposure. And that's why we want, Freddy, we want to really build that wall of immunity, not only for adults, but everyone that is eligible for the vaccination. And that's why the government is really ramping up vaccination before we can adapt to this new normal and everybody will be ready. If in case there will be new variants of concern or new surge of cases, that wall of immunity will be there for us to protect us.
Now let's talk about another group of people at risk. And these are people with comorbidities. Because recent data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, or CDC, noted that protection offered by COVID-19 boosters against severe disease dropped after just 4 months. And this raises the possibility that a fourth shot may be needed for high-risk groups like the elderly and people with comorbidities. Some people, not just one, but multiple comorbidities. Dr. Edsel, can you explain why a possible fourth shot might be needed and how this should be in the minds of people?
Of course, this is really part of the virus side of the equation. No? How well the virus is able to adapt and eventually evade our immunity in terms of being neutralized, no, or not getting infected. And this is something that's going to be actively pursued and checked by the health bodies, no? Because again, people with comorbidities, as we've repeated, no, is that if you do get infected, the risk for severe is very high. So it's important that they are given the necessary protection to prevent that from happening.
Now, Dr. Jean, when it comes to people with comorbidities, is there a definite risk still nowadays? Are these the people we see with symptoms that need hospital care?
Yes, correct, Freddie. No? Why is that so? Because if you are in a vulnerable population, you have comorbidities. And when you have COVID, that infection will make your comorbidities unstable. Like, for example, if you have hypertension and if you get COVID, it may not be the respiratory symptoms, but because of the infection, your blood pressure goes up. And that's why we're seeing a lot of these patients now incidentally positive for COVID, but they present in the hospital because of stroke, because of bleeding in the brain and paralysis. So that's just important. The importance of vaccination is really emphasized because when we look at comorbidities and vulnerable population, Freddie, the bar of protection, the bar of efficacy of a vaccine should be higher compared to the younger population. On that manner, as Dr. Edsel mentioned, this is where we can maximize the importance of giving, if I may say, giving a fourth dose, the booster dose.
Dr. Jean, when it comes to their fear of having their checkup, because a lot of people with comorbidities probably have not had their regular checkup in at least 2 years or so because of fear of being infected. What is your advice for them in terms of hospitals now being safe for people with comorbid conditions?
Okay, so they should not be fearful about the situation now, no, compared to several months ago. We are a better, safer place now compared to previous months. More people are already vaccinated. And at the same time, the hospital has always been ready in accommodating patients, especially with regards to an environment that there will be less transmission. And that's where you have the face mask, the face shield, and a good ventilation. So I would really encourage them to go back and have your checkup, regular checkup with your doctors, and maintain your maintenance medication, and to prevent also infection, have yourself vaccinated.
Now, Dr. Edsel, I'd like to touch on now about testing. What's your advice for the viewers when it comes to testing? Is RT-PCR still the gold standard? Should people be testing themselves at random every now and then just to be sure for their peace of mind? What's your advice?
Again, what we have to remind people is these are risk mitigation strategies. No, and you don't have to do it, but it is recommended if you do. And there are certain ways that we can do it that can approach it by reducing the risk strategies. So what I'm trying to say is there is no single correct way to do it, but depending on how you approach it, the goal is really to reduce the risk of infection to staff, to personnel, or anyone in a certain situation. But if it's a question of the gold standard, no, the gold standard will still be RT-PCR testing. And we can utilize the many tools at our disposal, again, to reduce the risk. So that yun yung goal naman talaga ng testing.
Now, while treating mild COVID-19 symptoms can be managed at home, what about for people who aren't infected? Can we start going back to normal? More on this after a short break. You're watching MedTalk Health Talk, where your care always comes first. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez, and welcome back to MedTalk Health Talk, your partner in healthcare. Dining out in open spaces, watching movies 1 seat apart inside theaters, and traveling for leisure. These are some new normal activities we've developed over the last 2 years. Yet our health should still take priority. A number of us might be struggling with the so-called pandemic weight. Stagnation also negatively affects our mental health. So if our viewers want to go to the gym or bike around the metro, Dr. Jean, how do they protect themselves from COVID? What are some reminders? People who like to go outdoors and feel that it's enough ventilation to not wear any mask or things that might protect them from the virus. Is this sound advice?
Still, we have to be very careful with the way we deal with this virus. For one, always wear your face mask. Second, frequent hand washing. Third, do regular disinfection. If you are in an environment like gym, do regular disinfection before you go to another area. And as much as possible, especially in enclosed spaces, the gym, the restaurant, you have to ensure also a very good ventilation. And I think those are important aspects of the prevention and what is this new normal.
Now, the World Health Organization said last February 12 that the decreasing trend in the country's COVID-19 cases was really encouraging. Now, as we move into another year of the COVID-19 pandemic, we are more aware and equipped with the knowledge in beating the virus. Dr. Edsel, what should Filipinos look forward to in the coming months?
Most of the same right now, no? So nakasanayan ninyo until it's officially announced by the WHO that the pandemic is over. I would suggest that people maintain their vigilance, no? Wear your face masks, no? As Dr. Solante said, no? Hygiene, no? And regular disinfection, ventilation in the areas, no? So I'd like people to take the idea that the possibility that something like this might occur in the future. And hopefully we have learned from the COVID-19 pandemic so that we're a bit more prepared kung sakali mangyari man lang ang ganitong situation ulit.
Now, Dr. Jean, if there's something that this pandemic, a good thing that this pandemic brought about is that a lot of people have been more health conscious, especially their awareness on trying to be aware that something can infect them, as Dr. Edsel mentioned. If there's something that people should continue to still adopt within their daily routine in terms of infection control, even past this pandemic, what should they be, Dr. Jean?
We have to change our mindset. By changing our mindset and being very careful, then that will also dictate our behavior. So meaning we have to protect ourselves every day. Even if we go back to normal, we want to go back to our life, but there's still that important protection that we should not be complacent about. So I think that's the basic approach now of most Filipinos. And of course, Freddy, vaccinations, I would still like to emphasize the importance of vaccination because there are still a lot of those that are not vaccinated. And if they want to be going back to normal life, then having that vaccine will give them one step ahead of the virus.
Now, easing COVID-19 restrictions does not mean we have to relax. We have to stay vigilant and not let our guards down. So it is important to stay informed and follow health and safety protocols so that you can keep yourself and your family safe from COVID-19. Thank you to infectious disease specialist Dr. Ronchi Solante and clinical genomics lab head Dr. Mark Edsel Ayas for being with us today and sharing your up-to-date information as well as your insights. I'm Dr. Freddy Gomez and thank you for watching MedTalk Health Talk. We'll see you again next time.
Politics as usual.
In this country, not everything really goes according to plan, and politics is, as usual,
Up close and more. Catch CNN Philippines Hour on DZKI-IRIGA. Weekdays, 6 to 7 p.m.
Sa pagpili ng Nung makabuluhan at matino ang pamumuhay.
Sa isip, sa salita, at sa gawa.
Gabayan ang Pilipinong bumoto ng responsable. Yan naman ang aming panata sa PPCRV.
Hindi sa'yo yan. Hindi sa'yo yan.
Hindi sa'yo yan.
Maliit man o malaki, ang korupsyon ay korupsyon. Kapag hinayaan, sisirain nito ang kinabukasan ng bayan. Kaya maglakas loob sumigaw ng
Hindi sa'yo yan. Hindi sa'yo yan.
Hindi sa'yo yan.
Hindi sa'yo yan.
To report about corruption, please contact DOJ Action Center at dojAC@doj.gov.ph.
Pai! Ano na naman?
Sisa itong kaibahan mo kasubago. Magayon, kubing pa.
Si friend ko. 18 pa lang ito.
18?
Correct. Tanda ko ang edad niya. Taiuman ang numero kan Ako Bicol Party List. Numero 18.
Kaya palang tandaan mo, anak ko Bicol Party List, numero 18.
Ako Bicol Party List, katabang na, kasurog pa, numero 18 sa balota.
Political advertisement is paid for by Ako Bicol Party List.
CNN Philippines R sa RPN-DZKI.